budget review, the state legislative review, some very important ECE updates, and how we can keep this wonderful momentum going. So right now I am going to turn it over to Josie Escobar, our policy associate.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, everyone. My name is Josie Escobar, as Liz said, policy associate here at Illinois Action for Children. We have a lot of exciting updates to share with you today, so I'm going to get started right away. We wanted to start off this webinar first with a huge thank you to all the new and familiar faces here, all the advocates, providers, professionals, parents, and everyone else for taking action this past legislative session, which ended a couple of weeks ago, and really getting involved in advocacy. We had several opportunities for our base to get involved, from contacting your elected officials, attending Advocacy Day, resharing our posts on social media. So we wanted to share a couple of quick stats. First bullet point, we had 374 advocates in Illinois take action by contacting their legislators, and we had a total of 812 messages sent to the Illinois General Assembly elected officials. This is a huge number, and as we know, this is one of the many ways that elected officials can find out about our ask in terms of advocacy and more information about Smart Start Illinois, which is the huge thing we've been advocating for. In the second bullet point, in April, our We the Village Coalition partnered with Raising Illinois and Child Care for All coalitions to host the first ever joint Early Childhood Advocacy Day. And it was our first in-person one at Action for Children about 3 years, I think, which was super exciting. We had over 300 participants attended, and they all showed their support for increasing funding for early childhood programs. We also ended a day with our very own CEO, April Janney, who introduced Governor J.B. Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton, who also showed their immense support as well for our coalitions. And then our last bullet point, utilizing our social media was really important to getting the word out about increasing funds for early childhood programs. And in total, we had over 500 engagements over Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This includes likes, comments, shares, all that stuff. We want to say thank you to all the organizations and individuals who engaged in our content. And we know that we have a bigger platform now because of all of this really exciting activity. So it's just a really small snapshot of what we accomplished as part of our advocacy engagement. But this is really all to say thank you so much for your continued engagement and support with Illinois Action for Children. A little bit does go a really long way, and we're excited to share what has come out of all of this hard work. And with that, I wanted to pass the next slide over to Michael Kim, who is our Director of Policy, and he's really going to go deep into what passed in the budget this past legislative session. So I'll hand it over to him.
Thanks, Josie. Hey, everyone. Good morning. I'm sorry, good afternoon. My name is Michael Kim, Director of Public Policy here at Illinois Action for Children. Before we get started and go dive into some of the nitty-gritty stuff about budget and legislative policy, I first wanted to say we apologize for not having Spanish translation on this PowerPoint deck. We will get those translated and sent out to all folks after the meeting is over. We just had some technical difficulties at the last minute. So that's why you see a little bit of a dead space on the right side of your screen. And then and after that, I just wanted to introduce our new VP of Public Policy, Research and Advocacy, Angela Farwig, who has been with us for about 3 months now. So I'm gonna pass over to her real quick and let her introduce herself. And then I will go into the budget updates after that.
Thanks so much, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Farwig. I am the Vice President of Public Policy, Advocacy, and Research at Illinois Action for Children. Just wanted to introduce myself to all of you on this webinar today. As Michael noted, I have been with the organization for about 3 months, but I've been in the early childhood policy space for more than 10 years and have long been a fan of the work that Illinois Action for Children does and the team here. So I'm just really thrilled to be a part of the team, thrilled to be working with all of you to ensure that all young children and their families in our state get the great programs and resources that we know they need to help them grow and thrive. So I will just stop there. But again, just really excited to be a part of this team and to be a part of this work. And thank you for being here today. Michael?
Thanks, Angela. Yeah, so that is our team. We will talk about some other openings that we have in our team at the end of this webinar. At the end of this webinar, for that you guys could all share with your network and so what. So let me go into the state budget. So as you guys all know, in February, the governor of Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker, announced a new initiative that he called Smart Start initiative for early childhood education. Smart Start Illinois is a multi-year plan to ensure that families raising youngest children in Illinois have access to high quality early childhood education, home visiting, early intervention, and preschool before reaching kindergarten. So he committed to spending around $250 million of the general revenue fund into Smart Start Illinois. So how this is worked out is that, actually, Liz, can we go back to the slide before? I believe it has the overall budget. In the beginning of this legislative session, early childhood advocates came together to make sure that we build on our momentum from last year, where we asked for a 10% increase across the board for all early childhood line items in the state budget. Last year, we were able to get around 6 to 10% for most of our early childhood education line items, except for the child care service line item, which covers CCAP and some of the other DHS work that they do. So this year, we wanted to, again, build on that momentum. So we were asking for a 20% increase. And this was prior to the governor announcing his budget proposal. So we were going to ask for a 20% increase across the board so that we have more funding and more resources that can go to early childhood education. To our delight, the governor again announced the Smart Start Illinois initiative in February, with where he proposed a 28% increase, which is about $320 million overall into the early childhood education system. So that is what the proposed budget was in February. And then after legislative session came and gone, the General Assembly approved a budget of $290 million of general revenue fund that will go into early childhood line items. So we will go over specific line items and then answer any questions you guys might have. So the first line item that was increased was, next slide, is our child care service line item. So CCAP was able to get an extra $170 million in general revenue fund, which is a 41.1% increase from FY23 budget. How this works out is that $170 million of general revenue fund will be broken down into $100 million going into what the governor is calling the first in the nation workforce compensation contract. So this is a compensation contract that will be a continuation of the Smart Start, the Strengthen and Grow grant that was given through federal money during COVID. And then it would transition into what currently is called the Smart Start Transition Grant, and then it will go into the workforce compensation contracts next year. So $100 million of the general revenue fund will go into the workforce compensation contract, and then $70 million of this of the general revenue funds of the $170 million will go into the CCAP caseload, which was increased, which was increased last year from the governor's executive executive order where he increased it from 200% federal poverty level to 225% federal poverty level. So to cover that increase in growth of caseload, the 50 million of that 70 million will go into the caseload increase, and then another 20 million will be going into improving and revamping the childcare management system, which is the application system for CCAP and families to be able to apply for CCAP. So original budget that the governor proposed was $200 million. So as you can see, the 170 million has a $30 million shortfall. The way that the the administration will cover that $30 million shortfall is that they will pull another 30 million from the federal stimulus fund that the state still has in the bank to be used. So in the beginning of the proposal, the governor allocated $66 million of the ARPA funds that would be used for the workforce compensation. And then again, to cover the $30 million that is the shortfall from the general revenue fund, they will pull another 30 million from the ARPA funds to make it a total of $96 million federal funds and then $100 million general revenue fund. So that's kind of like a little bit of a breakdown of how CCAP is going to be spent and how the monies come from different areas of spending. Next, I believe, is the line item for early childhood block grant. So for this, it is a 12.5% increase, which is a $75 million additional general revenue fund from FY 2023. So sorry, that should be FY 23 budget and then FY 24 budget on the slide. So for the $75 million, we'll focus on creating 5,000 new preschool slots, and which by law, some of the percentage of the funds will have to be allocated to infant and toddler programs. And then on top of that, we are hoping and we're encouraging the governor's office to continue to use some of the funding to increase compensation and support for the workforce as well. Last year, there was a 10% COLA that was given to the field, and we're hoping that they will keep with that and give additional funding to the workforce. Next slide. For early intervention, there's a 34.5% increase, which is a total of $40 million additional funding in GRF that will go into reimbursement rate by at least 10%. And then again, address service coordination challenges to make sure that more families and more programs have access to early intervention. And then lastly, there was next slide, Liz. Lastly, there was a 27.9% increase, which is a $5 million increase in additional funding from FY 23 to 24. This funding will help IDHS provide home visiting services to an additional 500 to 650 families. And then in addition, it will focus on increasing compensation for home visiting workforce again. So a lot of the additional funding that we are getting in early childhood education, we are focusing on additional service to families, as you can see, and making sure that the workforce is compensated and is being more put a focus on the workforce overall. That's it for the main budget items. I believe next one, we are going to talk a little bit about additional childcare outcomes. So the 4 items that I talked about is what is in the Governor's Smart Start Initiative plan. So for the next 4 years, those 4 items will be the main focus of raising funds and raising general revenue additional funds for each of those line items. This year, we were able to get some additional money for early childhood needs, and some were, I would say we have good news and bad news for some of these. I'm going to kind of go out of order here and then kind of go with the good news first. So if some of you might remember last year, there was a bill that was introduced at the end of session that allowed $2 million for off-hour childcare funding, which basically giving $2 million to programs that would that would focus on serving parents who have non-traditional work hours. So whether it be shift parents, warehouse parents who work in warehouses, or first responders, anything like that. So we all know that everyone doesn't have a 9-to-5 job, and there's different schedules for everyone. So this $2 million was allocated to DHS, and then the DHS would give that money to programs that would support the need for off-hour childcare. That money wasn't spent last year, so it has been reallocated for $2 million for this year to be spent out. So we're happy to know that the $2 million didn't go to waste. It's still going to be used for the purpose of what it was appropriated for. Secondly, this year, kind of same situation with the off-hour childcare. Last minute legislation came out where there was an additional $5 million in new funding for early childhood special education through the Early Choices program at ISB. And this will support inclusion in schools and community-based early childhood settings for preschool students with disabilities and developmental delays to have access to that to those needs for families in this particular area. So that's a $5 million that's very welcome to be able to be used in a good area of early childhood as well. This top part here, I wanted to just spend a quick time to say that this is something that we were excited to hear about when the governor again introduced his budget in the beginning of February, where he allocated a additional $100 million in new funding for early childhood construction grants, so that more programs could have access to these capital dollars. Last year, there was $100 million that was allocated for fiscal year 23, but $60 million was given to 6 different programs, and we were saddened to see that 4 out of the 6 were public school districts, and only 2 were community-based organizations. We know that this money is definitely in need for community-based organizations to be able to expand and to keep up with new renovations to make any kind of space or safety issues that might be needed. So we were really excited to hear that there was going to be an additional $100 million that would be put into fiscal year 24. Unfortunately, during the budget process, that $100 million was cut down to $50 million. And then more as budget negotiations started happening, the $50 million has now been shifted to other areas of capital needs. So unfortunately, this year, there is no additional funding for early childhood construction grant or any capital funds. Another kind of a sad point about this is that the language that is implemented into what is called the Budget Implementation Bill, or the BIMP, is basically making sure how each budget, all the money is being spent. Had a language in there where it would restrict the $50 million that was supposed to be allocated for early childhood block grant would be only used for public school districts. So they made it even harder for CBOs to have access to the $50 million when they proposed it. So what this means is that even though there isn't any money, any new money that is being given to early childhood block grant, we're afraid that this language that specifically restricts any fiscal year 24 money in the early childhood block grant will be given to public school districts could impact the $40 million that wasn't used in last year's $100 million appropriated grant money. So the administration is looking at legal interpretation of how this is going to work. Again, we're making sure that the $40 million that's left from last year does not go into strictly to public school districts. We're going to try to work hard to make sure that the $40 million that is still left that it can be used for CBOs. So I think that is the last part of budget. So I'll stop there. Liz, next slide. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. So let me do one last one about the BIMP. So in the BIMP, we as Illinois Action for Children, have been working hard this year to increase the income eligibility for CCAP families to go up to 250%, and then have it increasingly go up as additional fiscal year moves on. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get that bill passed, but what we were able to do was able to codify the 225% federal poverty level, which is the current rate, into law. So for a historical background, as I mentioned, Governor Pritzker increased the income eligibility level from 200 to 225 last year through executive order, but that executive order is not binding by law. It's just an order that he provided so that more families could access CCAP. Now that we're able to put this into law through the BIMP, is the new current federal law, state law is that 225% of federal poverty level is the new benchmark for families to get access to child care assistance program. And on top of that, the Smart Start Illinois initiative was codified into law as well. Again, when the governor proposed Smart Start Illinois, it was an initiative and it was proposal and not anything that was submitted into law. But with this language being codified into law, Smart Start Illinois will be in statute, and the workforce compensation grants will be in statute as well. Next slide, Liz. All right, so that's the budget update. I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions. I see some chats. I don't know if those are questions or just comments, but I will stop for a minute or so to see if there's any questions from the audience. All right, I'm gonna wait another couple of seconds just to see if there's anyone's just trying to get off mute. If not, then we will move over to the legislative updates on some of the substantive bills that were passed this General Assembly. And I'm gonna kick that off to Josie.
Hold on, Michael, Brendan had a question about how we can find out which legislators voted to send capital funding to school districts, only so we can better target and educate them for future votes. Is there any way we can find that out?
Yeah, so to be honest, the capital funding was not any sort of vote. So they, legislators vote on the budget implementation bill, but they don't really put into, they don't vote on specific line items in the BIMP. They just vote on the BIMP overall or vote against it, either or. So to that question, we don't really have a targeted folks. I think it's just better next legislative session or even during veto session, it might be good to tell your legislative state representatives that capital funding for early childhood is important, and the reason for that is X, Y, and Z, and it should go to and having it be prioritized for community-based organizations could be a good use of money. So I think that's probably the best way to better educate and to better advocate for more funding for capital money. So I think there's some other questions.
So Michael, to follow up on that, this is Mariana from Family Focus. I know that there was conversation with elected officials around the prior year's appropriate, grants that were received and that were awarded, and not being as many CBOs as we'd liked. So where does that decision-making lie? In what portion of the process does the rule change happen? And is there opportunity there beyond talking with our electeds, as I'm sure many of us have, to influence that or educate, I should say, in that process? Like, who makes those decisions?
Yeah, so Angela, if you want to jump in, please feel free to. But the deciding factor for how the grants are allocated is through the man, the name just slipped off my head. Angela, do you?
Yes, it's the Capital Development Board.
That's what it. Yeah. Yeah, so the Capital Development Board is the ones that decide on where the funding goes to. So again, just more detail. When we found out the money from last year's appropriation for $100 million went to more school districts than community-based organizations, we did write a letter to the Capital Development Board to, asking them, what the reasoning was, how they came to decide these, the 6 selected grantees. And we asked them that, for the remaining $40 million, that they do really prioritize some of the CBOs in the state as well. So that's the best way that we are able to advocate for. And again, the $40 million that is still left, we're gonna try to make. We're gonna work our hardest to make sure that those do go out to the CBOs or prioritize out to the CBOs.
Michael, before we move on, I wanted to flag that there was another comment in the chat that has some intel or some information. I don't know that we have anything additional to add there, but wanted to direct you to it. A comment that this was a last minute give to some legislators to get them to support the entire budget. Who were these legislators?
Yeah, again, who puts stuff into the BIMP and things like that is just kind of the ways of the working of legislative process. We don't really have there's not like a roll call of like who, who votes and who puts stuff in there. It's just kind of like negotiations between different legislators. And obviously there's the top 2 budgeteers who basically write the budget with other legislators in Springfield. So to go to specific legislators, we don't have that information. Are you talking? This one question about were there any grants or programs allocated for home-based childcare? Is that referring to the early childhood construction grant, or? If so, I don't think so. I think there was one. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the other 2 non-public school district school district programs were, but I'm pretty sure it was not a home-based childcare.
I do want to add really quickly that the Early Childhood Block Grant request for proposal round that's out right now does have a new family childcare model that allows them to partner with, I forgot the name, but other school districts or organizations that can apply to the grants. So this is pretty new and we're still trying to learn more about it, but that's also another avenue that family childcare homes can apply for funding. But it's a good question, Dante. And we'll keep an eye out for any opportunities for home providers, of course. We'll also have we'll try to have more time for questions towards the end. I know it's a lot to intake, but if it's okay with you, Michael, we can go ahead with the presentation. Obviously, Smart Start Initiative and a lot of the FY24 appropriations were a huge focal point from this past session, but there are a few legislative / policy accomplishments that I'll go ahead and get into. So the first one on this slide, it's Senate Bill 2390. This bill passed both chambers, the House and Senate, and was spearheaded by Senator Christine Pacion-Zayas in the Senate and Representative West in the House. So a little background, 5 years ago, a rule was implemented to expand beneficial staffing flexibilities that allows professionals with up to Gateway's Level 5 credential to serve as a lead teacher in a preschool for all classroom. So this bill simply extends this rule for another 5 additional years to what is called a sunset to ensure these teachers can still stay in these positions. And this bill and this action to do so received overall bipartisan support. Next slide, Liz. Next bill is Senate Bill 1794. This bill also passed both chambers. I also want to add this bill and the previous one I don't believe has been signed by Governor Pritzker yet, but we'll keep you guys updated. This bill was spearheaded by also Senator Pacione-Zayas in the Senate and Rep. Aaron Ortiz in the House. SB 1794 codifies the state's existing IDHS home visiting programs into law. And this move really just ensures that important investments into home visiting programs continue and that future funding from general revenue funds is used consistent with the law throughout the state. We know that home visiting has been operating in Illinois for more than 30 years, and it's funded by multiple streams, including IDHS, Illinois State Board of Education, and federal funding streams. Home visiting is an important program, as we know, to achieve positive maternal and child health outcomes. And this bill simply outlines the program into law. Next slide, Liz. I'll pass it back to Michael.
Thanks, Josie. Yeah, so this is, I would say, just more of a less of an update and not really, or update on the 3-hour rule or what, I guess you guys could be more familiar with the flexibility of assistant teacher in childcare classrooms. So as you all probably are aware, when with the impact of COVID and disturbing classrooms, DCFS created an emergency rule a couple of years back where they would allow assistant teachers to lead a classroom without a lead teacher present for up to 3 hours, colloquially known as the 3-hour rule. We've heard from many providers how useful this role was for them to be able to shift around teachers and to be able to be flexible with schedules and whatnot during the height of the pandemic. So this year, Senator Chair Mason, the chair of the early child chair, Pacione-Zayas, on the Senate side, Early Child Education Committee, introduced HB 3566, which would basically try to codify the 3-hour rule into law. It passed the House and then got into the Senate side, but DCFS and the governor's office wanted to make sure that this specific things like rules for childcare programs should be amended through rules change and not really specifically put into law. So a couple of advocates and the sponsors for the bill met with the governor's office and DCFS and decided that we would proceed with their approach on making this change through administrative rules and not go through with this in terms of legislative process. So at the end of session, we were told that emergency rule would be posted before the May 31st, 2023 deadline, which was the last day for the previous emergency rule for the 3-hour rule to be in place. DCFS fell a little behind. They sent out a emergency rule and submitted emergency rules on June 2nd, I believe it was a Friday, and sent out a notice to all providers. As you guys all probably know, this is where it gets a little interesting in terms of how the rule was submitted to JCAR through emergency rule. So basically what they did was they modified the 3-hour rule to make it a little bit more stricter in terms of how the three-hour rule could be used. So the three main aspects of the modified rule or modified items in the 3-hour rule is that the original guidance allowed assistants to teach for 3 hours maximum, though it could be and it could be continuous. The new rule states that a childcare assistant teacher can only use be in a program in a classroom by themselves for the first and last 90 minutes of the program day. So an hour and a half in the beginning of the day, an hour and a half at the end of the day. Second rule that they modified was that the 3-hour rule could only be used in classrooms with two-year-old students or older. In the previous 3-hour rule, in the original one, there was no real restriction on which classroom could be used and which classrooms couldn't use the 3-hour rule. And then lastly, the rule modifies that the flexibility of the 3-hour rule could only be used for up to 50% of classrooms that are operating during the day. So again, if you have 10 classrooms that are licensed and operating, only 5 of those classrooms could be used for the 3-hour rule and no more than 5. We know that this is not the rule that everyone is accustomed to and everyone has been using in the past couple of years. We do believe that in Illinois Action for Children, we do believe that the 3-hour rule should not be used in specific core hours of developmental areas where children are learning and really developing, getting the education that they need. But we do also think that some of the rules of that, some of the modified rules are a little unnecessary in terms of the reason why the 3-hour rule exists. So currently we are still working and talking with DCFS and the governor's office to see what we can amend and what we can change. Again, so they have submitted the emergency rule into JCAR and that's in place, but they're still in the process of making this a administrative change to make this rule permanently into the 407 rules in DCFS. So we're still in this process of trying to figure out where we need to go and how we can make this rule a little bit more structured, a little bit better structured so that, again, programs can use this to their benefit and not to their detriment. I think that's all the legislative updates that we have. I will stop there to see if there's any questions again, and then Josie and I can answer anything that you guys might have. I am not seeing any questions in the chat, nor do I see any hands up on the Zoom call as well. So if that's the case, I'm going to go over this one last slide about one additional update. Okay, sorry, there's someone who just put Sue, can you explain, like, what kind of timeline are you asking? Or I guess what's the timeline in referring to? Oh yeah, that's still in the works. Again, this is something that we are taking to the governor's office and to DCFS by listening to providers, because we know there's a lot of chatter in the ECE community about these changes and how they're not really useful with so much restrictions that they put into place. So in terms of that, we don't have a timeline on when or if they're going to change it. It's just a continuous communication that we're going to have with DCFS and the governor's office to see, so that they know that, you know, the field is concerned about these changes, and that, you know, they feel that these changes hurt their programs more so than help them in terms of the way it currently is written. So to answer your question, we don't have a specific timeline. It's just one of those things that we kind of have to just continue to work with with both DCFS and the governor's office.
Quickly adding onto that, I just dropped a link in the chat if people didn't have a chance to look at the recent guidance about the 3-hour rule from DCFS. It's in there if you guys want to learn more.
Yeah, Sue, I totally understand your situation, and I know that, you know, a lot of programs are having to make modifications and to do these things. So yeah, so the best thing I can tell you is that we are definitely trying to figure out what we can do and see how we can make some of these changes as soon as possible. So. No problem. This last piece, I just want to kind of update you guys on some scholarship funds that are currently out there. If you guys are familiar with the Early Childhood Access Consortium for Equity, or ECACE, they have been providing scholarships to incumbent childcare workers for, I believe, 1.5 years now. I think the scholarship has been up and running for about 1.5 years. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I know that the program has gotten a lot of uptake in terms of how many incumbent teachers are taking advantage of the scholarship. When it was first introduced, the scholarship was only for teachers that are seeking to get a bachelor's degree or an associate degree. Now that they've had 1.5 years of the scholarship up and running, they've decided to expand that scholarship to incumbent teachers who are looking to get a post-bachelor's degree or any other credentials that they might need to advance their professional development. So it's a welcome news that we obviously want our field to get the education and training that they need to really provide that high quality early childhood education for our children as well. So current application for school year 2023-2024 is currently up and running on the ECA's website. I believe the deadline for that is July 14th. Let me double check with that real quick. I believe it's July 14th, but we can definitely put in the link to the ECA. Oh, and Josie already did it, so you guys should have that information. Yes. All right. I'll pause there one more time to see if there's any additional questions about anything we've covered up to now, and then if not, then we can go over to the next portion of our webinar, where we kind of want to ask you all on some questions of how we can get you guys better engaged, better educated, and to be able to be ready to do some amazing work next session. Because, before you know it, the 104th General Assembly will be starting real soon. So I'll pause there, see if there's any other questions. And then if not, then I will move over to the next section of the webinar. All right, so we are gonna just do some 3 really quick polling questions. Again, about how you guys prefer to be connected with advocacy and some of the policy work, policy updates that we currently have. So we will go through these questions one by one, and I think Josie's gonna put them in a polling question that you can just click any of the items that are that you would like to check off. So first one is what is your preferred method of early childhood advocacy? Josie put the poll in there, so feel free to select which
I
ones.
wanted to add that I actually put 2 questions in this poll, so it's the first and second one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Michael.
Thanks, Josie. No worries. So the second question is, what would help take your advocacy to the next level? So are you looking for additional training? Do you think you can get more, updates from us? How can we help you elevate your level of advocacy as well? All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds on these first 2 questions. All right, I do not see the number of participants going up anymore. So Josie, if you wanna, okay, never mind. Once I said that, it started going up again. So, okay, I will let it stay open for a little bit longer.
I think it stopped going up. Should we close it?
Yeah. Let's end the poll. I really appreciate this, everyone. I think this will definitely help us figure out how to better engage with you all over summer and into the next legislative session. For those interested, this is our results for today. All right, Josie, can you put up the last question? So this last question is wanted to hear from you all in terms of how we can better connect with our state legislators. So there's a lot of interest from state legislators who would like to see how childcare programs operate, how they're run, and how they can see the progress of what you guys all do. I think a lot of people don't really know childcare programs unless they have a child in a specific program. So we want to try to see if there's any interest in you all hosting a site visit for some of the state legislators in your district. We already have a handful of people that a handful of legislators that are interested, and we just want to make sure that we connect them with people in their district as much as possible, just because I think it's best to see them, best to put them in situations where they can work with their constituents and their district as well. So that's what this question is about. Again, all of this is anonymous, so you don't have to let us know. I think once we get a little bit more feel for how many people really want to participate in this, we can send out a survey or like a sign-up sheet that you can provide your information in onto, and then we can connect you guys to your state legislators as well. So I'll leave it open for a little bit longer and have you guys all just provide any input that, or answer this question as best you see fit. All right, I think there's some interest in the field for this, so we will definitely follow up with everyone on here and our listserv to see if who's definitely interested in participating in this and to be able to host a state legislator to their program. So stay in touch, and we will definitely follow up with you all on that portion of it. So this is just a quick recap of folks. All right, I think we're doing pretty decent on time right now. So with the 5 minutes that we have left, I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we talked about, and then do some housekeeping announcements at the end. Again, the budget was a great year for us in terms of the additional money that's coming. The money that the governor has proposed and the General Assembly has approved to spend is, not to use this word lightly, but it is unprecedented that this much money is going into early childhood education. And then the fact that this Smart Start Illinois initiative is a 4-year plan that is going to be worked on for the next 4 years. So that's something really good to be proud about. And all of you guys did great work in terms of advocating and making sure that your state legislators know the importance of early childhood and the fact that we need more additional funding for our field. Next, legislation workforce this year. I think a lot of the legislations that were passed this year were really good in terms of helping the workforce stabilize and to be able to work to make our programs better and high quality as well. And then lastly, again, advocacy, we can always use more help. We can always have you guys stay involved as much as you want or as little as you want. There's a one size, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So there's a different ways that you all can stay involved in different ways that you guys would like to. So we really look forward to doing this work with you guys into over in the summer and into next session. So really excited for that as well. So I'm gonna close us off with this last slide that just kind of shows you how you can stay informed and how you can and some of the positions that we have open at Illinois Action for Children. So again, the ways that you can stay connected and keep the momentum going is you can join the Read the Village Coalition. We can send out all the information to the link and everything to you all after the webinar. To stay informed in some of the policy updates and anything that's changing at the state level and at the federal level when we do have updates in that area, please sign up for our policy updates. And then lastly, as I mentioned, if you're interested in this field and really want to, or have anyone that you think would be interested in working at Illinois Action for Children, please feel free to provide them with our website and with our 2 current job openings. One is for a Senior Policy and Engagement Associate, and the other one is for a Assistant Director of Advocacy. So if you have anyone that is interested in making sure that our children have the best opportunity possible for early childhood education, feel free to send them our way. with 2 minutes left, I am going to say thank you all for joining us to just hear about what we were able to accomplish this year, and what we will be able to accomplish in the coming year as well. My email and Josie's email are both posted on the slide, so please feel free to contact us with any questions or anything else that you guys might want to reach out to us about. So I think we're good and perfectly on time. We have a minute spare, so I'm going to give you all that minute back. And thank you guys all for joining us for this past hour to just hear about the work that we were able to do. Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.